Welcome everybody to another video about the behemoth modern scoring strings. MSS 1.1 has been released. This is my 1000th video on modern scoring strings from AudioBro, but it's the first that features the new version 1.1 improved legato and ostinato features together with a magical mystery tour of a bunch of new stuff. Before we start, the script for this is downloadable at the link in the description, so if you'd like to read it yourself, grab the text file and enjoy. The new legato is essentially by request of the user base, a bit more laggy or sluggish to play live in auto mode, but they have a few controls that make it extremely flexible in some innovative ways. First, you can simply turn off the automatic features, dial in a quick and responsive legato while playing things in, if you like, at the cost of shortening those beautiful, sweet legato transitions they recorded. Some users will already be familiar with playing a little ahead of the beat to compensate for this added latency that is going to be happening when audio is on, particularly users of, say, Cinematic Studio Strings, CSS, which is widely known to have a very convincing legato sound. And like CSS, you can choose to use a more responsive legato by turning off auto, I think I mentioned this already, and dialing the knob clockwise, which essentially shortens the time spent on the intermediate legato transitions between the notes. Think of this speed control like a speedometer. To make things go faster, step on the gas. Under the hood, these speeds are determined by tables and fine-tuned so that playing slower or faster gives a more convincing result out of the box versus the 1.0 release, which arguably brings MSS up to date with the competition in 2021. Oh, by the way, I am not affiliated with AudioBro. I was not paid for this. I did not get MSS for free. I'm a customer like all of y'all. And so I'm just saying all of this out of my own interest in the product and sharing information about it. Okay. There is an offset control. This determines the position in the legato transition sample file to begin playing back. It essentially cuts out part of the recorded transition to give you a more responsive feel while playing notes. So the offset moves into the waveform. I'm kind of simulating it here visually, and then slides it back so that it starts with just less of the transition sample there. Of course, there's a volume control as well. This has an auto setting, which is again driven by tables, so different note transition speeds will turn the transition volumes up or down according to your new note on events. So if you have new note on events in sequentially very quickly, note, then the table will turn the transition volumes, I believe, up. And if you have them slow, new note on, new note on, new note on, then the volumes actually will go down of the transitions to help kind of give that feeling of more of a whooshy ebb and flow. AudioBro admirably went even further by letting you draw your own values into these tables. Just click on the wrench or spanner in the upper left of Contact and click on the Script Editor tab to view them. The bars at the right represent MIDI note on events in fast succession, and bars at the left correspond to slower note on events. All of these, everything I said above covers the standard legato, all of these functions I just described. They apply a little bit to glissandos and portamentos, but the offset of gliss and port are not automatable with the tables. So you can actually have another video where I took auto off the whole time and did all of the manual automation, or like not really automated. I just used the mouse to speed and slow down the portamentos, for instance. I'll link that, or it's just in the MSS playlist on my channel. The point there was you can make the portamentos go faster or slower, but someone pointed out that they don't change the offset per tempo. So that would be maybe another feature request. If someone on my channel commented that VSL does this, so if you want the kind of start point to also be automated with a table, then that would be a feature request. But the transition speed itself is already implemented, and it applies to portamento as well as legato. I haven't tried glissando. I assume it is the same as portamento. Now, there's also a new bloom feature. Now, this is new to the 1.1 update. It's for more romantic styles generally. It helps dial in a bit of a mini crescendo to help the transition between notes blossom. These are real recorded crescendos, and they have some more vibrato than in the versions you get from the norm part of the slider, the transitions type slider, the attack type slider. They also affect the first note of a phrase. So you can bloom into a phrase and then switch to norm or bode in your legato, or vice versa. You could start with effectively bode, or if legato is off, then I think it's accent, and then transition over to bloom or norm. So a lot of automation will help you. You know, people often think of a VSL with all of their many articulations in the columns of maps, to be really awesome and superior. I think this has a lot of those same options. They're just in a slightly more economical interface where everything's kind of present for your eyes at once, and that almost makes it seem like there's fewer options. And there might be fewer options. I'm not going to say that this has as many options as some of those larger VSL libraries, but because they're presented all on the screen at once in a fairly economical manner doesn't mean that many of those same options aren't there. It's just you kind of need to do a click or two and then start automating things to figure out how to leverage it all in your pieces. All right, I'm going off script. We also find the new bode legato and improved rebow implementation. The rebows are not going to sound as pronounced as a product like Moto from Performance Samples. They're a bit more subtle at the automatic settings. And to be fair, they don't always sound like bode, like a bow change. They do sound a little bit more like an accent. That's kind of what I have found, and I did tell AudioBro that calling them bode, maybe I just want more of an accent. That's fine too, and maybe you just can let the term bode go. Moto from Performance Samples has a very clear bode sound on the transition notes, but it is somewhat unique in the marketplace because of the way that it does that very, very clearly. Not every string sample library is doing that technique that convincingly, I guess, or that kind of in such a pronounced specialized way. It's also several $100s for one transition effect. So and some shorts, and it works well, but it's a boutique library when not on, especially when not on sale. Anyway, so you can do two things to emphasize bode legato sounds, meaning make a legato transition kind of pop even more if you're interested in kind of giving a shot. First, you can turn up the legato transition sound while using the bode legato. Simple. Second, you can dial up the speed to the fastest, take auto off, and layer a staccato short to really emphasize those note changes. By changing speed to fastest, remember the speedometer, you are effectively allowing the short to begin as the transition begins. The layered shorts can be used with CC only. There's continuous controller or CC plus velocity, velocity alone, or a hybrid where velocity only affects the shorts while CC only affects longs. So keep that in mind too. This behind this gear or cog are different ways of affecting the dynamic layers for longs and shorts using velocity or your continuous controller, usually mod wheel. The pro tip, when you are using velocity for the sustains, these do have independent dynamics per note. And I believe that's new to version 1.1. To rebow the same note, simply hold the note, trading the note with the repeat key, which is set up here, A-1. You can change it. The vibrato in MSS version 1 was a little understated, so the new version has a Molto control, which magically squeezes a little bit more emotion out of the vibrato without sounding artificial or algorithmic. Now, I plan to have either in this video or a future video a little bit of a demonstration of how you can squeeze even more vibrato out of modern scoring strings. Now, I haven't wanted to turn this feature off in most cases. It still isn't overbearing for me. So to take something subtle and makes it, not as molto as some other things out there. Spitfire symphonic strings, for instance, has more vibrato. CSS, which is more of a chamber-sized group, has more vibrato, a lot of vibrato. This might not sound overly impressive in isolation when you just say, I'm going to click Molto on and say, well, that's not molto-y. That's not as molto-y as I thought it might. But as the sections begin adding up, it really helps the ensemble. And if it still isn't enough, remember there is a detune dial on the main controls that, when used judiciously, helps thicken things up if you're going for an even more lush sound. It doesn't make the vibrato itself sound more exaggerated, but it does create the effect of more instrumentalist players doing more vibrato in the subtle way. While we're on the topic of luscious goodness, there's also a setting that AudioBro discovered which highlights the B and D violins 1. And if you watched my previous video where I showed how to navigate the ensemble builder, this is something you could do yourself, but having it handy in the switcher tile, which we can go over later, should make it easy to find or even just remember. So the first thing I like doing when opening up the MSS instruments is turn off Auto Divisi. This is as easy as selecting it from the fourth switcher tile. You don't need to change the ensemble page, and disable it if you prefer to stay on the main page. These choices can be automated using the switching controls behind this cog or gear. Things have changed with the Ostinato feature set as well. There's a new release timing menu, and again, high means turn up the speed or get faster. Release extension can be used to shorten the volume envelope of the Ostinato. In practice, these sound like this. Here is the same passage with the new legato. We might as well listen to those again because they have different things going on. I would still like to be able to try a legato transition out of an ostinato, but maybe that feature request could be attempted in a future update. I wanted to put a note here that I did personally have some timing issues during live playback that were resolved when I rendered the audio. So if you have the same concern, try bouncing the audio or freezing it, or whatever your DAW calls it, at Contact's perfect rendering setting, and see if that clears it up for you like it did for me. It was just a little bit of a bobble in real time that I was hearing that just disappeared when I bounced it. Quick note on the sustain pedal. It is going to force the mono legato that we think of as legato, when, monophonic legato, even when not in the auto DVC mode. So you can play the separated notes with the pedal up and hear separate notes, or separate notes when the pedal is down and hear connected monophonic legato notes. Also, if you're using Studio One 5.2 or newer, there are now sound variation maps in the folder that you can drag into the editing window. And there are other articulation switching maps for other DAWs. I think those were in the previous version, though. The newer sound variations are because Studio One released that feature while in between MSS 1 and 1.1. Click the wrench or the spanner to open the variations editor in Studio One. Drag the map onto it, they'll load. You can find a snapshot in Contact to use with the DAW integrations, no matter what your DAW, as well as plenty of other useful snapshots. Check out this list. I'm going to leave you with some music. This is just a piece that I wrote using mostly this new bloom articulation, and then I solo each of the instruments so you can hear. Sometimes I do switch to norm if it's a faster transition because you don't want to bloom or crescendo into every fast transition. You want to be able to change into a normal legato transition for those. And, I'll probably put a noisy outro at the end and ask you to subscribe again and, the usual YouTube stuff. Cheers.